Hello and welcome to another video review. This is Deus Ex for PC, Mac, and it was eventually ported to PlayStation 2. This is an interesting and very ambitious game that was developed by Ion Storm and published by Eidos back in 2000, specifically for PC and Mac, and it was later ported to PS2 in 2002. But it's known for being one of the first hybrid first-person shooter role-playing games that actually really worked. Games before had done RPG elements in their first-person shooters, like System Shock did that kind of thing. But this was known for being one of the first to really get it absolutely right, and to really propel the genre forward. In fact, if it weren't for Deus Ex, you probably wouldn't have hybrid role-playing games and shooters today. Because this really showed that it can work, and when it does work, it can be absolutely phenomenal. At least according to review scores, according to sales, according to the massive following it has. So when the sequel came out, Invisible War, and it changed things up quite a bit, people were really just miffed at that. Massive disappointment for a lot of Deus Ex fans. So what is it about Deus Ex that makes it so widely loved? Well, it's certainly not the presentation. At the time, the graphics were pretty average. The animations do their job, and that's kind of it. It's that kind of early 3D era where nothing looked particularly good. Textures were all low-res. This is on the original Unreal Engine, specifically the UT version, Unreal Tournament. And it doesn't look bad for the time, but nor does it really look that impressive. It's really more the art style and the atmosphere that's created by just the whole presentation that really make it so good, I guess. Graphics themselves, it's a dystopian cyberpunk future. Everything has that very nice, almost Ghost in the Shell kind of look to it, and it's just... You can really just see the influences from other cyberpunk things, like, I guess, Shadowrun, Ghost in the Shell, that sort of thing. And so that really comes through, and it really does help to create a specific cyberpunky atmosphere. And the sound design really has a lot to do with that as well. Sound effects themselves are decent. They're not bad, they're not good. They kind of do their job, and that's about it. There's nothing really wrong with that. It's just they don't really impress me that much. Music is this kind of almost techno. It's really not. There's some orchestral stuff in it. It's kind of weird. It's very fitting for the cyberpunk environment, but a little hard to classify in my eye. But it's pretty good, and it really helps to create that vibe. The voice acting is kind of interesting. It's cheesy, but I think it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be kind of laden with all sorts of weird bits and pieces here and there that kind of allude to that whole cyberpunk atmosphere, and that's a really well done thing. The actors all do convey a certain persona for each character, and that really does kind of draw you into the game. So overall, the presentation does a lot to draw you in and really create a good atmosphere. But if you take it apart bit by bit, nothing is particularly impressive, even for the time. But what really matters here are the story and the gameplay. Basically, you play as J.C. Denton, who is an agent for UNATCO, the United Nations Anti-Terrorism Coalition. And obviously your job is to stop global terrorism, and it gets more complicated than that later on. It's set in the year 2052, a dystopian future. There's this big plague going around that's basically killing people by the thousands and such. And it turns out to be a conspiracy story. It takes you all over the world and all sorts of really bizarre conspiracy twists and such. Only one problem with that. It tells you at the very beginning of the game that it's a conspiracy story. Literally, opening cutscene makes it blatantly obvious. And so you're sitting there the entire time going, yep, I knew that was going to happen, yep, knew that was going to happen, yep, knew that was going to happen. And it provides a pretty much problematic storyline, because while it is still a good storyline, while it's still well written, while it's still well told, you see it coming from a mile away, basically. You know it's a conspiracy story, so there's nothing really surprising about it. Except maybe some of the details of it, but still, you know it's a conspiracy story, so it's going to be kind of ridiculous. But still, it manages to be a good story in the way that it unfolds around the player as opposed to just being told. And that's a good thing, because when you let the story unfold around the player, you really get that immersion factor going. Especially when you have a game like this. This is a combination of first-person shooter and role-playing game. And it's one of the first that really did it well. System Shock did it as well, but this one kind of propelled it into the limelight, so to speak. It didn't. It wasn't just a cult classic like the System Shock games were. It was actually just widely loved. So, when people went in to play this, they found that it had the elements of a first-person shooter. You run around, you get guns, you blow stuff up, that sort of thing. As well as RPG elements, like you can upgrade your character with different augmentations. You can train certain skills and such eventually, and get better at them. And it also gives you the freedom of choice. And what I mean by that is it allows you to choose the way you want to play it. If you want to play it as this kind of balls-to-the-wall action game, then you really can. If you want to play it as a stealth game, you can. If you want to play it as kind of a social game, you can try it. I mean, it's going to be difficult, but you can try it. And it's that freedom that really makes Deus Ex really noteworthy. That freedom to choose how you want to attack certain situations. And certain situations will basically leave it open to you and completely, and others will say, yeah, this is probably the better option, you might want to go with this, but if you don't, that's okay too. And there's a problem with that, though. While this game does give you all that freedom, while it does have that awesome choice, and in fact the choices will affect the way that the game is played, your choices can affect the outcome of the storyline, and they can also affect how people interact with you. So it's something to keep in mind. There's a lot of replayability here. Problem is, while it does give you that freedom to choose the way you want to play, none of the ways are particularly well done. I mean, they're serviceable, they do their job, they work, they're very playable, they're just clunky. The shooter element, for instance. When you go to shoot a gun, you basically have to crouch and wait for your reticle to go to the maximum accuracy point. And if you haven't trained your skill in whatever weapon you're using, that's going to take forever. And when that happens, you're going to be sitting there kind of a sitting duck the entire time when you're trying to aim at things. So that's pretty problematic. If you're going the stealth route, then good luck, because you're not going to ever have enough tranquilizer darts nor stun prod ammunition. So that becomes pretty problematic. I mean, you can work around it, but it's really one of those early game snafus where they didn't put in enough of something. Because tranquilizer darts take quite a while to actually take somebody down. But if you go the other routes, like say you wanted to do hacking or whatever, then you're going to be deficient in other skill areas as well. So it's kind of this weird balancing act where you really have to pay attention to what you're doing. There are boss characters in this game. You will kind of have to fight them at some point or other. And if your skills are deficient enough, then you're going to have a really hard time beating them. But that said, it's never to the point where it's completely unplayable. I mean, you can easily still play through this game. Well, not easily. It's going to be more difficult if you try to go certain other routes. Like, say if you've been a stealth character for the game and you suddenly come across an area where it's basically fight or die. Well, you're going to have a hard time doing that. But you'll still be able to do it. It's just going to be hard. And it's kind of weird because it sets up this cool storyline. It sets up this freedom of choice gameplay and does it fairly well. But when you go in to play it, you'll find certain things that just irk you. Like not being able to hit certain enemies, even if you're point blank. Enemies not going down when you hit them with tranquilizer darts, or stun them with the prod or whatever. Or not even be able to talk your way out of situations. I mean, it happens all the time. So you'll find little snafus with the technical side of things here and there, where while the mechanics do work, they don't work ideally. And that's kind of the major problem with Deus Ex. It really doesn't work ideally. It works very well, don't get me wrong. And it is a very fun game. but it's really hard to get into for someone who has never, hasn't played it at the time it was released. And say you've played Invisible War or Human Revolution, both of which are much more accessible than this, and you go back to this one, you'll find that it's pretty brutally difficult sometimes. It's partly because the mechanics aren't exactly 100% perfect or whatever. So, overall, Deus Ex is definitely well worth looking at because, I mean, it's a big piece of gaming history now. It's one of the games that pretty much propelled the hybrid shooter role-playing game genre forward. At the same time, it's a very flawed thing, so don't go into it expecting the most amazing game ever made. Because while it is a good game, while it is a very solid, very historically relevant game in terms of game development, obviously, it still has problems that prevent it from being absolutely amazing. But still, definitely well worth checking out. The link will be in the video description box to where you can grab a hold of a copy, and thanks for watching.